I spent 35 years building a life with dignity. I survived losing the love of my life 7 years ago. I built an empire starting as a gallery assistant, turning every penny into smart investments. And on that Christmas night, I watched my only son pick up the gift I'd carefully chosen for my 5-year-old grandson, a handcrafted set of maple wood building blocks made by a local carpenter whose work I'd admired for decades, and throw it onto the marble floor of my dining room. "Why do you keep giving this cheap garbage, Mom? Don't you have any shame? My son deserves real gifts, not this poor hippie crap." 23 people witnessed it. My family, close friends. Benjamin started crying, confused about why Daddy was destroying his present. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, just smiled discreetly while adjusting the angle of her phone, always filming everything for her damn Instagram. I felt every pitying glance pierce through my skin like ice. The wooden blocks scattered across the floor I'd had restored just last spring. Hand-polished marble from Carrara that Robert and I had chosen together in 2006, back when he was still healthy, back when we'd planned to grow old in this house watching grandchildren play in these very rooms. Some of the blocks splintered on impact. I heard the crack of maple wood breaking, and something inside me cracked with it, but I didn't say a word. Not one word. I stood up with the dignity my late husband Robert always admired in me, picked up my vintage Hermes bag, purchased with my own sweat in 1998 when I closed my first major gallery deal, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Vanessa's bright, artificial voice. "Oh my God, is she seriously leaving? On Christmas?" Then her laugh, that practiced little trill she uses in her videos. So dramatic. Trevor said nothing to stop me. My son, who I'd carried for 9 months, who I'd nursed through pneumonia at age 7, who I'd put through that pretentious private school, even when it meant I ate ramen for lunch 3 days a week, he said absolutely nothing as I left my own Christmas dinner. The cold December air hit my face as I stepped outside. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my car keys. I sat in my Mercedes, a 2019 model I'd bought outright, no financing, because that's how I do things, and just breathed for a moment. Through the tall windows of my dining room, I could see everyone returning to their seats, the party continuing, as if nothing had happened, as if my humiliation was just a minor interruption to their festivities. I looked at my phone. 8:47 p.m. on Christmas night. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Marcus Chen's name. Marcus had been my attorney for 12 years. He'd handled Robert's estate when he passed. He knew my family. He knew everything. My finger hovered over his name for maybe 5 seconds. Then I pressed call. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Eleanor? Is everything all right?" "Marcus." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I need to see you tomorrow morning. First thing. It's time." There was a pause. Marcus is brilliant. He understood immediately. "I'll have everything ready by 9 a.m. "My office?" "Yes, thank you." "Eleanor," he said, and his tone shifted to something almost gentle. "Are you safe right now? Do you need anything tonight?" I looked back at the house, my house, the colonial mansion in Beacon Hill that I'd purchased in 2003 when everyone said the market was too high, the house that had tripled in value, the house that represented every smart decision I'd ever made. Through the windows, I could see Trevor laughing at something someone said. Vanessa was showing people something on her phone, probably already editing the footage she'd taken. "I'm fine, Marcus. I'm perfectly fine. I'll see you at 9. I hung up and started the car. As I pulled away from the curb, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The house was lit up like something from a magazine spread, warm and golden and beautiful. From the outside, it looked like the perfect family Christmas. No one driving by would ever know what had just happened inside. I drove to the Four Seasons, checked into a suite, and ordered room service. A simple Caesar salad and a glass of Pinot Noir. I sat by the window overlooking Boston Common, watching the Christmas lights twinkle in the darkness, and let myself feel everything I'd held back in that dining room. The humiliation, the rage, the bone-deep exhaustion of loving someone who seemed determined to make me feel worthless. But mostly, I felt something else, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I felt done. I'd tolerated this for too long. Years of subtle digs about my modest lifestyle compared to the mothers of Trevor's friends from that elite prep school. Years of Vanessa's passive-aggressive comments about how I didn't understand modern family dynamics, whenever I suggested they spend less time photographing Benjamin and more time actually playing with him. Years of watching my grandson being raised as a prop for social media content while I was kept at arm's length, only called when they needed free babysitting or when the private school tuition was due. That last thought made me laugh out loud, alone in my hotel suite. The tuition. God, if Trevor only knew. I pulled out my phone and opened my photos. I'd been documenting things for a while now, ever since Marcus had suggested it 6 months ago when I'd first talked to him about updating my will. I scrolled through the evidence I'd quietly collected, screenshots of Vanessa's anonymous Instagram account, iRealTalkDL, where she spent hours complaining about her poor, embarrassing mother-in-law to other influencers, building a whole secondary following based on hating me. Bank statements showing the $32,000 annual transfers to Brookside Academy for Benjamin's tuition, paid directly to the school for the past 2 years. Receipts for the emergencies I'd covered. $8,500 when Trevor's BMW needed a new transmission last year. $12,000 for the down payment on their furniture when they moved into that ridiculous house in Wellesley. $15,000 when Vanessa had complications after Benjamin's birth and their insurance wouldn't cover the full amount. I'd kept every receipt, every email, every text message where they'd begged for help, and then, weeks later, posted on social media about how they did it all themselves. The wine tasted better with each sip. I felt calmer than I had in months, because I knew something Trevor didn't know, something he was going to discover very soon. I wasn't the desperate, aging mother grateful for whatever scraps of attention he threw my way. I was Eleanor Whitmore, a woman who'd turned a $50,000 inheritance from my parents into a $4.2 million portfolio through smart investments and careful planning. I was a woman who owned a respected art gallery in Boston's most prestigious neighborhood. I was a woman who'd survived my husband's death and come out stronger, who'd built something real and lasting while my son built a house of cards financed by credit and delusion. And I was a woman who was about to stop playing nice. I finished my wine and went to bed. I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I arrived at Marcus Chen & Associates at 8:55 a.m. Marcus met me at the door personally, which he only did for serious matters. His expression was professionally neutral, but I saw concern in his eyes. "Coffee?" he offered as we walked to his office. "Please." Black. We settled into his office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. Marcus had been my attorney since 2013, recommended by Robert before he got too sick to handle our affairs himself. He was 51, sharp as a blade, and one of the few people in my life who'd never once patronized me or underestimated what I was capable of. He placed a thick folder on the desk between us. "I pulled everything after our conversation 6 months ago," he said, "when you updated your will and set up Benjamin's trust fund. I had a feeling we might need it eventually." I looked at the folder. "Tell me what we have." Marcus opened it and began laying out documents with practiced efficiency. Complete financial history of support provided to Trevor and Vanessa over the past 5 years. Total, $287,000. This includes direct payments, covered expenses they claimed were their own, emergency bailouts, and the ongoing tuition payments for Benjamin that Trevor tells everyone he pays himself. $287,000. I said it out loud, feeling the weight of the number. Nearly $300,000 given to a son who threw my grandson's Christmas present on the floor and called it garbage. "That's just the documented money," Marcus continued. "There's also the matter of your current estate plan. As of 6 months ago, you established a $3.2 million trust fund for Benjamin, accessible at age 25, with professional trustee oversight. Trevor was removed as primary beneficiary and now serves only as co-trustee with significant limitations and mandatory legal supervision. He doesn't know about the changes. No. You instructed me not to inform him until necessary." Marcus pulled out another document. "There's also this, the screenshots you sent me of Vanessa's anonymous Instagram account. I had my team verify authenticity and document everything. Over 300 posts across 18 months, all disparaging you to an audience of 47,000 followers. Some of the content could qualify as defamation, particularly the posts where she makes false claims about your financial situation and suggests you're manipulating Benjamin." I stared at the printouts of Vanessa's posts, Reading them the first time had hurt. Now they just made me angry. One post from 3 months ago. Mael showed up with another handmade gift for my son. Like, lady, we get it, you're broke. But don't project your poverty on my child. He deserves better. 42,000 likes. Hundreds of comments agreeing with her, calling me selfish, saying I was probably jealous of their success. What are my options, Marcus? He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers, a gesture I recognized as his thinking pose. Legally, you have several avenues. Defamation suit against Vanessa. Demand for repayment of the $287,000 as loans rather than gifts, which we can argue based on the pattern of deception. They explicitly told others they were self-sufficient while depending on your money. We can also pursue emotional distress claims, though those are harder to prove. But Eleanor, before we discuss legal strategy, I need to ask you something. What? What do you actually want to achieve here? Is this about punishing them, protecting Benjamin, protecting yourself? Because the answer changes our approach. I thought about Benjamin's face last night when his father destroyed his present. I thought about my grandson asking me last month why Mommy said he couldn't come to my house anymore for their weekly baking afternoons. I thought about 7 years of widowhood spent trying to be a good grandmother while being treated like an embarrassing obligation. I want them to understand that there are consequences, I said slowly. I want them to know they can't treat me like this anymore. But mostly, Marcus, I want to make sure Benjamin grows up knowing his grandmother loves him and that he's protected from their worst impulses. I want him to have the security they're too busy performing wealth to actually build. And I want Trevor to wake up and realize what he's become before it's too late for him to be the father Benjamin deserves. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we don't go nuclear immediately. We give them a choice. What kind of choice? He pulled out a fresh legal pad and started writing. We present them with 2 options in a formal meeting. Option 1, you pursue full legal remedies. Sue for defamation, demand repayment of all funds, seek court-ordered visitation rights for Benjamin, and activate the trust fund provisions that remove Trevor entirely from any oversight role. This would be financially devastating for them and publicly humiliating. And option 2? Option 2, they sign an agreement. Mandatory family therapy for 2 years with a counselor of your choosing. Complete financial transparency regarding Benjamin's care and education. Repayment of $150,000 of the $287,000 over 10 years at reasonable terms. Most importantly, guaranteed access for you to Benjamin without interference, with violations resulting in immediate activation of option 1. They also agree to cease all disparaging content about you, public or private. I felt something shift in my chest. This was real. This was actually happening. When do we present this to them? Marcus checked his calendar. I can have everything drafted by end of day. We schedule a meeting for early next week. Both of them need to be present, and I strongly recommend you have a witness beyond just me. Perhaps your sister? Catherine lives in London now. Anyone else you trust completely? I thought for a moment. My gallery manager, Patricia. She's been with me for 15 years. She knows the whole situation. Perfect. We'll schedule for next Wednesday, 10 a.m. That gives them the new year to stew a bit. Marcus smiled slightly. In my experience, a few days of wondering why their mother's attorney is requesting a formal meeting works wonders for readiness to negotiate. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Thank you, Marcus. Eleanor, he said as I reached the door. One more thing. Whatever happens in that meeting, whatever they say, remember this. You're not the villain here. You're a woman who gave everything to her son and deserves basic respect in return. Don't let them manipulate you into feeling guilty for having boundaries. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying. As I left Marcus's office and stepped back into the bright December morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. Mom, seriously? You're being ridiculous. Call me. I deleted it without responding. I had nothing to say to him yet, but next Wednesday, he was going to hear everything I'd been holding back for years. And this time, I wouldn't be asking for his approval or understanding. This time, I had something better than words. I had consequences. I suppose I should explain how we got here. How a mother and son who once shared everything ended up in an attorney's office with legal documents between them, like weapons. Trevor was born in 1993, 2 years after Robert and I got married. I was 30 years old, working 60-hour weeks as an assistant curator at a small gallery in Cambridge, pregnant and terrified, and absolutely determined to prove I could handle it all. Robert was establishing his architecture firm, taking on every small project he could find. We lived in a cramped apartment in Somerville, ate pasta 4 nights a week, and were genuinely happy. I remember the first time I held Trevor. Robert was crying, actual tears running down his face, and I just felt this overwhelming love mixed with absolute terror. This tiny human was depending on us, and we barely had enough money to cover rent and diapers simultaneously. But we managed. We always managed. Robert's firm started getting bigger contracts when Trevor was 3. By the time our son was 5, we'd bought our first house in Newton. Nothing fancy, but it had a yard and good schools. I'd been promoted to assistant director at the gallery, and I'd started making my first real investments. Small properties in neighborhoods everyone said were up and coming. Dorchester, parts of Roxbury, areas my mother told me were too risky. Those risky investments are worth about $1.8 million today. Trevor was a sweet kid, curious, bright, affectionate. He'd sit in my lap while I reviewed auction catalogs, pointing at paintings and making up stories about the people in them. "That lady is sad because she lost her cat," he'd say, pointing at a Modigliani portrait. "We should find her cat, Mommy." Everything changed when he turned 11. Robert and I had worked so hard to save enough for Trevor to attend Brookside Academy, one of Boston's most prestigious prep schools. We could only afford it because I'd negotiated a partial scholarship, 40% off tuition, if I agreed to curate their annual alumni art show for free. It seemed like such a victory at the time. Our son, attending school with the children of senators and CEOs and old-money Boston families whose ancestors came over on the Mayflower. I didn't realize I was setting him up for a lifetime of resentment. The other kids at Brookside didn't have mothers who worked. They had mothers who chaired charity boards and summered in Nantucket and wore Cartier bracelets that cost more than our annual grocery budget. They lived in houses with names. They had the Lake House and the place in Aspen. Their fathers were managing partners and hedge fund executives and tenured Harvard professors. Trevor started coming home with questions. Why don't we have a summer house? Why does Mom work at a gallery instead of owning one? Why do we only have 1 car when Jake's family has 5? I tried to explain that we were building something, that wealth takes time, that what mattered was education and opportunity and love. He'd nod, but I could see something shifting behind his eyes. Embarrassment, shame. Like our perfectly good life was somehow deficient because it didn't match the extreme privilege surrounding him at school. By 14, he'd stopped inviting friends over to our house. By 16, he'd started lying about what Robert did for work, inflating small architecture firm into major commercial developer. By 18, when he left for college at Cornell, I barely recognized the boy who used to make up stories about sad ladies and lost cats. Robert noticed too. We talked about it late at night after Trevor left for school. "We gave him too much too fast," Robert said once. "He doesn't know the value of anything because he never had to struggle for it." "We struggled so he wouldn't have to," I replied. Maybe that was our mistake. Robert got sick during Trevor's junior year of college. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. He died 6 months later, 2 weeks before Trevor's graduation. He was 53 years old. We'd been married for 28 years. Trevor didn't cry at the funeral. He gave a beautiful eulogy, perfectly composed, and then went back to his apartment in Ithaca and didn't call me for 3 weeks. When I finally reached him, he said, "I'm processing, Mom. Everyone grieves differently. But I think the truth was simpler. I think losing Robert made our family's mediocrity, as Trevor saw it, feel permanent." Robert had been the successful one in Trevor's narrative, the one who might still make them really rich. With him gone, Trevor was left with just me and my gallery job and my rental properties. Nothing glamorous, nothing he could brag about to his Cornell friends whose parents owned companies and vacation homes. He graduated in 2015 with a degree in economics and immediately got a job at a mid-tier investment consulting firm in Boston. Good job, solid income, but not Goldman Sachs or McKinsey. Not the kind of name that impressed people at Brookside reunions. I think that killed him a little bit too. I was alone in the Beacon Hill house by then. I'd bought it in 2003, right after Robert's firm had its best year ever. He'd designed a sustainable housing development in Cambridge that won awards and brought in serious money. We'd celebrated by finally buying our dream house, this beautiful 1890s colonial that needed work but had good bones and a perfect location. Robert had restored it himself, spending weekends refinishing the original hardwood floors, rebuilding the kitchen with reclaimed materials, turning it into something special. After he died, I couldn't leave. Every corner held memories of him. The marble floors he'd helped me choose, the built-in bookshelves he'd designed for my collection of art books, the garden he'd planted with roses that still bloomed every June. I threw myself into work after losing him. Took on more clients, expanded the gallery, made smarter investments. My portfolio grew. My reputation in Boston's art world solidified. I was doing well. Better than well, honestly. I was thriving in the way you thrive when throwing yourself into work is the only thing keeping grief at bay. Trevor met Vanessa in 2020 at some influencer event his firm was sponsoring. She had maybe 20,000 Instagram followers then, doing lifestyle content about living your best life on a budget, which apparently meant promoting fast fashion brands and showing people how to make their Target purchases look expensive. I liked her at first. She seemed sweet, a little young, but genuinely interested in Trevor. She asked me questions about the gallery, about Robert, about growing up in Boston. I thought maybe she'd be good for my son, soften some of those hard edges he'd developed. Their wedding was in 2021, small because of COVID restrictions, which I think bothered Vanessa more than she admitted. She wanted the big Instagram wedding, the venue, the dress, the perfectly curated content. Instead, she got 20 people in my backyard and a Zoom link for extended family. I paid for the whole thing, $14,000. Vanessa thanked me exactly once, the day of the wedding. Never mentioned it again. Benjamin was born in 2022. I was in the delivery room, holding Vanessa's hand, while Trevor paced nervously outside because he couldn't handle being present for the actual birth. When they placed my grandson in my arms for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since Robert died. Pure, uncomplicated joy. I thought maybe this would fix things between Trevor and me. Becoming a grandmother, watching him become a father, surely that would remind him that family mattered more than status or wealth or whatever he was chasing. For about 6 months it did. Trevor called me regularly. They brought Benjamin over every week. Vanessa sent me photos constantly. I started hoping we could rebuild what had been broken. Then Vanessa's Instagram really took off. She pivoted from budget lifestyle to luxury family content. Started posting about Benjamin constantly. His nursery, his clothes, his toys, his routines. Every moment documented and monetized. Her follower count exploded. Brands started paying her for partnerships. She quit her part-time job at a marketing agency and went full-time as an influencer. And suddenly, I became a problem. I didn't photograph well, apparently. My house was too old-fashioned for her aesthetic. My gifts were off-brand. When I suggested maybe Benjamin didn't need to be on camera quite so much, Vanessa explained very patiently that I didn't understand the modern digital economy and that she was building generational wealth through content creation. The irony of her lecturing me about building wealth while I quietly paid their son's private school tuition was not lost on me. They moved to the house in Wellesley in early 2024. A gorgeous modern construction, all glass and clean lines, absolutely perfect for Instagram. Also absolutely beyond their means. Trevor was making decent money by then, maybe $180,000 a year, but not enough for a $1.8 million mortgage, plus Vanessa's designer wardrobe, plus Benjamin's $32,000 a year private school, plus the lifestyle they were portraying online. I found out later they were drowning in credit card debt. But they kept posting about their blessed life and their self-made success, while calling me whenever they needed money for emergencies. The school tuition was my idea. I called Brookside Academy directly and arranged to pay Benjamin's tuition as a gift, deposited straight to the school's account. I told Trevor I was doing it. But I don't think he ever told anyone else. To their friends, to Vanessa's followers, they were the successful young couple who could easily afford elite education for their son. I kept receipts for everything else too. The BMW transmission, the furniture down payment, the medical bills. Every time they called in a panic, I helped. Every time they posted online about doing it all themselves, I saved the screenshots. Marcus had suggested I start documenting things last summer when I'd first mentioned updating my will. Just in case, he'd said. People can surprise you when money's involved. I hadn't wanted to believe my own son would ever treat me the way he'd been treating me. But then I discovered Vanessa's anonymous Instagram account in September. A friend's daughter follows influencer gossip accounts and recognized Vanessa's distinctive ring in one of the photos on Your Real Talk Dill. She sent it to her mother, who awkwardly sent it to me with a message. I think you should see this. Reading those posts felt like being punched repeatedly in the stomach. Hundreds of messages over 18 months, all about what a burden I was, how embarrassing, how poor, how desperate for attention. Vanessa had built an entire secondary following, 47,000 people, based on hating me anonymously. That was when I called Marcus about more than just updating my will. And now, here we were. Christmas night 2024, with me in a hotel room and my son probably still at my house, eating the prime rib I'd had catered, drinking the wine I'd selected, enjoying the party I'd planned, with no idea that everything was about to change. I looked at my phone. 3 more texts from Trevor, each more annoyed than the last. I turned off my phone and ordered another glass of wine. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Wednesday was coming. The days between Christmas and New Year's were strange, quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I stayed at the Four Seasons for 2 nights, then went home to my empty house in Beacon Hill. The silence felt different now, not lonely, liberated. Trevor called 17 times in the first 3 days. I didn't answer any of them. Vanessa texted on December 27th. Eleanor, Trevor is really worried about you. Can you at least let us know you're okay? I replied with one word. Fine. She responded immediately. We'd love to talk about what happened. Maybe we can all sit down after the holidays? I didn't reply to that one. On December 28th, I was at the gallery doing inventory when Patricia found me in the back room, carefully cataloging a new collection of contemporary prints we'd acquired. You're different, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Patricia had been my gallery manager for 15 years. She was 62, sharp-eyed, and one of the few people who knew the full extent of my family situation. Different how? Lighter. Like you put down something heavy you'd been carrying. I smiled. Maybe I did. The Christmas thing? The Christmas thing. I told her about the meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, about Marcus's 2-option strategy, about all of it. Patricia listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, about damn time. You think I'm doing the right thing? Eleanor, I've watched you bend over backwards for that boy for years. I've seen you leave work early to babysit Benjamin so they could go to some influencer event. I've seen you wire money for their emergencies and then watch Vanessa post about a new designer handbag 3 days later. You're not punishing him. You're finally setting boundaries that should have existed a long time ago. He's going to hate me. He's going to have to deal with consequences for once in his privileged life. There's a difference. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went through old photo albums, pictures of Trevor as a baby, as a toddler, as a young boy. Robert holding him at age 3, both of them covered in paint from some art project. Trevor at 10, gap-toothed and grinning on our first real family vacation to Maine. Trevor at 13, sullen but still willing to smile for the camera at his 8th grade graduation. Somewhere between those photos and the man who'd thrown his son's present on the floor, something had broken. I'd been so focused on trying to fix it that I'd never stopped to ask if maybe I was part of the problem. Not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd tolerated wrong things for too long. I put the albums away and went to bed. On December 30th, Vanessa posted on Instagram a perfectly curated photo of their family in matching cream-colored sweaters, Benjamin sandwiched between Trevor and Vanessa in front of their Christmas tree. The caption made my blood pressure spike. Grateful for this beautiful family and the life we've built together. Sometimes the holidays remind you what really matters. The people who show up, who invest in your future, who understand that family means supporting each other's dreams. Not everyone gets it, and that's okay. We're focused on the ones who do. Blessed life, family first. New year, new energy. The comments were full of people praising their authenticity and their beautiful values. Nobody knew she'd edited me out of their Christmas photos. Nobody knew about the anonymous account where she called me an embarrassment. Nobody knew that the life they were posting about was financed partly by the woman they were subtly disparaging. I took a screenshot and sent it to Marcus with a message. Adding to the evidence file. He replied immediately. See you Wednesday. Don't engage before then. New Year's Eve, I spent alone by choice. Patricia had invited me to a party, but I declined. I wanted to sit in my house, in the space Robert and I had built together, and think clearly about what I wanted the next year to look like. At midnight, I poured myself a glass of champagne, a bottle of Veuve Clicquot I'd been saving for something special, and toasted to consequences, to boundaries, to finally being done with accepting scraps of respect from people I'd given everything to. My phone buzzed at 12:03 a.m. A text from Trevor. Happy New Year, Mom. Can we please talk? I turned off my phone and finished my champagne. January 2nd, Marcus sent the formal meeting request via email to both Trevor and Vanessa. Professional, brief, revealing nothing. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, this office represents Eleanor Whitmore in matters concerning family estate planning and related legal issues. Mrs. Whitmore requests your presence at a formal meeting to discuss important matters affecting the family. The meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, January 8th at 10 a.m. at our offices located at 125 High Street, Suite 2400, Boston. Both parties must be present. Please confirm your attendance by end of business, January 3rd. Regards, Marcus Chen, Esquires Marcus Chen and Associates. Trevor called me within 10 minutes of receiving it. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mom, what the hell is this? Why is your lawyer sending us formal meeting requests? What's going on? Just call me back, please. This is crazy. We can talk about whatever's bothering you without lawyers involved. Just call me. I deleted the voicemail. Vanessa texted, Eleanor, this seems extreme. Can't we just have a normal family conversation? I didn't reply. They confirmed attendance that afternoon. The next few days were revealing. I watched their social media carefully, something I'd avoided doing for months. Vanessa's posts became noticeably more frantic. More photos of Benjamin with captions about family bonds and unconditional love. A reel about setting boundaries with toxic people that got 340,000 views. She never mentioned me by name, but the implication was clear to anyone paying attention. On her anonymous account, which she apparently didn't know I'd found, she was less subtle. Meal is having a full meltdown because I called out her cheap gift-giving. Now she's got lawyers involved like we're the problem. Some people can't handle being held to basic standards. Pray for me, y'all. The responses were predictably supportive. You deserve better. Cut her off. Toxic mothers-in-law are the worst. I saved every single post. Trevor showed up at my house on January 5th. I watched through the security camera as he rang the doorbell repeatedly, then stood on my front steps looking confused and angry. He called my phone. I was sitting in my living room, 20 feet away from him, and I didn't answer. After 10 minutes, he left. He came back the next day with Vanessa and Benjamin. I watched through the camera as they stood on my porch, Vanessa holding Benjamin's hand while Trevor knocked. I could hear Benjamin's small voice through the intercom. Is Grandma Ellie home? I want to show her my new Legos. That one almost broke me. Almost. But I knew if I opened that door, if I let them in before Wednesday's meeting, they'd use Benjamin as emotional leverage. They'd cry and apologize and make promises they wouldn't keep, and I'd fold because I couldn't stand to see my grandson confused and sad. So I stayed silent. After 15 minutes, they left. That night, Trevor sent a long text message. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. I know I was an asshole on Christmas. I know I lost my temper and said things I shouldn't have. But this is insane. Getting lawyers involved? Refusing to talk to us? Keeping Benjamin away from you? You're punishing a 5-year-old because you're mad at me. That's not fair. We're your family. We love you. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. But please, can we just talk like adults? This legal stuff is so extreme. It's not like I hit you or stole from you or something actually serious. I made a mistake. I'm human. Can't we move past this? I read it 3 times. Each time, I noticed something different. First read, the apology that wasn't really an apology. I know I was an asshole, followed immediately by, but this is insane. Second read, the manipulation. You're punishing a 5-year-old, making me responsible for the distance he and Vanessa had created. Third read, the minimization. It's not like I hit you or stole from you or something actually serious, except he had stolen from me. Maybe not in the criminal sense, but he'd taken $287,000 worth of support while telling everyone he was self-made. He'd taken my dignity on Christmas night in front of 23 people. He'd taken my relationship with my grandson and parceled it out based on when it was convenient for him. I didn't reply to the text. Tuesday night, January 7th, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would happen the next morning. I'd planned this, prepared for it, gathered evidence, and built a strategy with Marcus. But actually, sitting across from my son and presenting him with legal consequences for his behavior felt surreal. At 2 a.m., I got up and made tea, sat in my kitchen, the kitchen Robert had rebuilt with his own hands, and let myself feel everything. Fear that Trevor would choose pride over reconciliation. Fear that I'd lose Benjamin entirely. Fear that I was doing irreparable damage to what was left of my family. But also something else. Something that felt like strength. I'd spent 7 years as a widow trying to be everything for everyone. The generous mother, the devoted grandmother, the quiet supporter who never asked for acknowledgement or respect. I'd swallowed hurt after hurt, telling myself that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for myself. Robert wouldn't have wanted that. He'd always admired my strength, my business sense, my unwillingness to be underestimated. If he could see me now, I think he'd be proud that I was finally drawing a line. I finished my tea and went back to bed. This time, I slept. Wednesday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully, a charcoal gray suit from Brooks Brothers, simple pearl earrings Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary, my hair pulled back in a neat chignon. I looked like exactly what I was, a successful businesswoman who knew her worth. I arrived at Marcus's office at 9:30 a.m. Patricia came with me as my witness, dressed equally professionally. Marcus met us in the reception area. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Ready. Remember, you're not on trial here. You're not defending yourself. You're presenting them with choices. Stay calm, stay factual, and let me handle the legal specifics." We went into the conference room. Marcus had arranged everything perfectly. Documents stacked neatly at the head of the table where he'd sit. 2 chairs on one side for Trevor and Vanessa. 2 chairs on the other side for Patricia and me. Water glasses for everyone. A box of tissues on the sideboard. Marcus thought of everything. At 9:55 a.m., the receptionist called. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore are here." "Send them in," Marcus said. The door opened. Trevor walked in first, wearing a suit but looking exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, his normally perfect hair slightly disheveled. Vanessa followed, dressed in what I recognized as a $1,200 Zimmermann dress. I'd seen her post about it last month. Investing in timeless pieces. No phone in sight, for once. They both stopped when they saw me. The professional setup. Patricia sitting beside me like a business associate. Marcus at the head of the table with his stack of documents. "What is this?" Trevor asked. His voice cracked slightly. "Please, sit down," Marcus said calmly. "We have a lot to discuss." Trevor and Vanessa exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. Fear? Confusion? Anger? Maybe all 3. They sat. Marcus folded his hands on the table and began. "Thank you both for coming. I know this is an unusual situation, but Mrs. Whitmore felt it necessary to address certain family matters in a formal setting with legal counsel present. I want to be clear from the outset. This is not a deposition or interrogation. However, what we discuss today will have significant legal implications, so I advise you to listen carefully." "Mom, what the hell?" Trevor interrupted. "Why are we doing this? Why can't we just talk at your house like normal people?" I spoke for the first time. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Because normal talking hasn't worked, Trevor. because I've tried for years to communicate how your behavior affects me, and nothing has changed, so now we're doing it this way." Vanessa's eyes were wide. She looked genuinely scared, which gave me a small, shameful flicker of satisfaction. Marcus continued, "Over the past several years, Mrs. Whitmore has provided significant financial support to your household. I have documentation here showing a total of $287,000 in direct payments, covered expenses, and ongoing financial support." He slid a spreadsheet across the table. Trevor picked it up, scanning it quickly. I watched the color drain from his face as he saw line after line of payments. The school tuition, the BMW repair, the furniture, the medical bills, the emergency loans that were never repaid. "This is—" Trevor started, then stopped. "Some of this was gifts. You can't just—" "Actually," Marcus interrupted smoothly, "the legal distinction between a gift and a loan often comes down to intent and expectation of repayment. More relevant here is the pattern of financial dependency, coupled with public claims of self-sufficiency. Mrs. Whitmore has evidence that while accepting this support, you and Mrs. Whitmore, Vanessa, explicitly told friends, family, and social media followers that you were financially independent." Vanessa spoke for the first time, her voice small. "We never asked Eleanor to pay for those things." "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "You called me crying about the BMW. Trevor texted me at midnight about the furniture down payment. You sent me a 3-paragraph message about how scared you were about the medical bills. Every time I helped, every time you thanked me, and every time you turned around and posted online about how you did it yourselves." "That's not—" Vanessa started. "There's more," Marcus said. He pulled out another document. "Mrs. Whitmore has also documented a pattern of defamatory statements made by you, Vanessa, on a secondary Instagram account under the username @RealTalkDill." Vanessa went white, actually white. "How did you—" Marcus slid printouts across the table. "Over 300 posts across 18 months, all disparaging Mrs. Whitmore to an audience of 47,000 followers. Some of these posts contain provably false statements about Mrs. Whitmore's financial situation, her relationship with her grandson, and her character. Several could qualify as defamation per se." Trevor was staring at Vanessa. "What the fuck is this? You have a secret account where you trash my mother?" "It's not. I was just venting," Vanessa stammered. "It's what people do. It's anonymous. It's not like it hurt anyone." "It hurt me," I said. My voice was still quiet, but I felt something sharp underneath it. "Reading those posts hurt me, Vanessa. Knowing you smiled to my face while calling me an embarrassment online. Knowing you built a following based on hating me." Tears started running down Vanessa's face. Real tears, not the pretty ones she cried in her vulnerable Instagram posts. "And then there's Christmas night," Marcus continued. He looked directly at Trevor. "In front of 23 witnesses, you took a gift your mother carefully selected for your son and threw it on the floor, while verbally disparaging both the gift and your mother herself. Multiple witnesses have provided statements confirming this occurred." "I was stressed," Trevor said. "I didn't mean—" "You humiliated her in her own home during a holiday celebration," Marcus said flatly. "That's what happened. Now, we're here to discuss how to move forward." The room was silent for a long moment. I could hear Vanessa's quiet crying. I could see Trevor's jaw working, like he was physically trying to hold back words. Marcus pulled out 2 more documents. "You have 2 options. I'll explain both, and then you'll need to make a decision." He explained option 1 first. The lawsuits, the public exposure, the demand for full repayment, the removal of Trevor from any role in Benjamin's trust fund. I watched my son's face as Marcus laid it out, watched him realize how completely I could destroy their carefully constructed life if I chose to. Then option 2, the agreement, the therapy, the repayment plan, the guaranteed access to Benjamin. When Marcus finished, nobody spoke for what felt like forever. Finally, Trevor looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. "You'd actually do this? You'd sue us?" "If that's what it takes to be treated with basic respect," I said. "Yes. We're your family. Then act like it." Trevor put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook slightly, and for a horrifying moment I thought he was crying. Then I realized he was laughing, a bitter, hollow sound that had nothing to do with humor. "This is insane," he said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Collecting evidence, building a case against your own son like I'm some kind of criminal." "You made me a case to build," I said. "Jesus Christ, Mom. I threw a present on the floor. I said some shitty things. That's it. That's what this nuclear option is about?" "No, Trevor." I leaned forward, keeping my voice level. "This is about 7 years of watching you treat me like an ATM machine while publicly pretending I don't exist. This is about you systematically cutting me out of Benjamin's life unless you need free babysitting. This is about your wife building a social media career partially based on mocking me to strangers. Christmas night wasn't the beginning. It was the last straw." Vanessa spoke up, her voice thick with tears. "I'll delete the account. Right now. I'll delete everything. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I never thought. I didn't realize you'd see it. It was stupid and cruel, and I'm so ashamed." "You're ashamed you got caught," Patricia said quietly from beside me. It was the first time she'd spoken. "If Eleanor hadn't found that account, you'd still be posting on it right now." Vanessa flinched like she'd been slapped. "I want to understand something," Trevor said, and there was something different in his tone now, quieter, almost vulnerable. "The school tuition. You've been paying Benjamin's tuition directly?" "For 2 years," I confirmed. "And I've been telling everyone I pay it myself." "Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something?" "I did tell you I was paying it," I said. "The first year, you thanked me. The second year, you barely acknowledged it. You just let me keep paying while you took credit for it with your friends." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the spreadsheet Marcus had given him. $287,000, he said finally. "I had no idea it was that much." "Because you never kept track. You just asked, and I gave, and you moved on. I would have paid you back. Would you? Because I don't see any evidence of that, Trevor. I see evidence of you and Vanessa living beyond your means, racking up credit card debt, and depending on me to cover the gaps while presenting a completely different image to the world." Marcus cleared his throat. "I need a decision today. Obviously, you'll want time to review the full agreement if you choose option 2. But I need your verbal commitment to one path or the other before you leave this office." Trevor looked at Vanessa. She was crying harder now, mascara running down her face, a far cry from her usual Instagram-perfect appearance. "What do we do?" he asked her. "I don't want to be sued," she whispered. "I can't. If this goes public, my whole career is over. Everything you've built is fake," I said. It came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take it back. "Your career is built on lies, Vanessa. Lies about your life, lies about your marriage, lies about me. Maybe it deserves to be over." She looked at me with something like desperation. "Please, I know I was horrible. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please don't destroy everything. I'll do whatever you want. The therapy, the repayment, all of it. Just please don't go to court." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. She was terrified, not just of losing her Instagram following or facing a lawsuit. She was terrified of being exposed as the person she actually was, instead of the person she pretended to be online. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The agreement isn't punishment," Marcus said. "It's a framework for rebuilding trust and establishing healthy boundaries. But it requires genuine commitment from both of you. If you sign it and then violate the terms, option 1 becomes active immediately. There are no second chances." Trevor was reading through the agreement now, his finger tracing the lines of text. "Mandatory therapy for 2 years, financial transparency regarding Benjamin, repayment of $150,000 over 10 years, that's $1,250 a month, plus interest at 4%, Marcus added. Well below market rate, I should note. Guaranteed access for Eleanor to Benjamin without interference." Trevor looked up at me. "You really think we'd keep him away from you?" "You already have," I said. "Vanessa canceled our baking afternoons 3 months ago. You forgot to invite me to Benjamin's birthday party in August. I found out about it from photos on Instagram. You've been systematically reducing my time with him for over a year." "That's not," Trevor started, then stopped. "Okay. Yeah, we did." Vanessa thought it was confusing for Benjamin to have different standards. Between our house and yours. Different standards, I repeated. You mean I wouldn't let you film him the whole time he was with me? I wanted him to just be a kid, not content. Vanessa made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. You don't understand. You can't understand. My entire income depends on that content. Benjamin is part of our brand. Without that, I have nothing. You have a son, Patricia said. That should be enough. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Trevor set down the agreement and looked at me directly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Do you even want a relationship with me anymore? Or is this just about Benjamin? The question caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, defensiveness, maybe even threats. I hadn't expected vulnerability. I want a relationship with the son I raised, I said slowly. The sweet kid who made up stories about paintings. The teenager who, despite all his insecurities, still came to me when he was scared or hurt. I want a relationship with that person. But I don't know if he exists anymore, Trevor. Somewhere between Brookside and Cornell and your desperate need to appear wealthy, you turned into someone I don't recognize. His eyes filled with tears. Actual tears this time, not anger or frustration. I'm right here, Mom. I never went anywhere. Yes, you did. You went so far away trying to be someone you're not that you forgot who you actually are. Robert's son. My son. A person who should have more self-worth than to measure his value by his zip code or his car brand or his wife's Instagram metrics. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become, I continued, and I watched the words hit him like physical blows. Not because you're not rich enough or successful enough, because you're unkind. Because you're so consumed with appearing important that you've forgotten how to be good. That's what would break his heart if he could see you now. Trevor pressed his palms against his eyes. His whole body was shaking. Vanessa reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I'll sign it, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Whatever it is, whatever you want, I'll sign it. You're right. About all of it. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. And there, in Marcus Chen's conference room with documents spread across the table and my gallery manager sitting beside me as witness, my son finally broke down completely. Marcus pushed the box of tissues across the table. Trevor took several, pressing them against his face like he could physically hold himself together. Vanessa sat frozen, her own tears forgotten as she watched her husband fall apart. I need a minute, Trevor said, his voice muffled. I need a minute. Marcus nodded. There's a private office 2 doors down. Take the time you need. Trevor stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. He walked out without looking at any of us. The door clicked shut behind him, and then we were 4. Vanessa stared at her hands, her perfectly manicured nails. I recognized them from a sponsored post last week. $200 gel manicure from some luxury salon in Newberry Street. Another expense they couldn't really afford. Another performance of wealth for the camera. He's not a bad person, she said quietly. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but Trevor really isn't a bad person. I know that, I said. If I thought he was genuinely bad, I wouldn't be offering option 2. I'd just go straight to court and be done with it. She looked up at me, and I saw something raw in her expression. You must hate me. I don't hate you, Vanessa. I don't know you well enough to hate you. You've never let me know the real you, just the Instagram version. The Instagram version is all I have. Her voice cracked. You asked earlier why I do it, why I need the content, the followers, the validation. You want to know the truth? I waited. My family lost everything when I was 16, she said. My dad had a successful contracting business. We lived in a nice house. I went to private school. We took vacations. Then one of his business partners embezzled $500,000 and disappeared. My dad went bankrupt, trying to cover the losses. We lost the house, the cars, everything. I finished high school at the public school, where everyone knew we'd fallen from grace. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara further. Do you know what that feels like? Having people whisper about you in the hallways? Having your former friends avoid you because your poverty might be contagious? I was the girl whose family used to be somebody. I swore I would never, ever feel that humiliation again. So you built a life based on pretending, I said. I built a life based on controlling the narrative, On social media, I get to decide what people see. I get to be the person I want to be, not the person circumstances made me. And yes, I monetized it. I turned my trauma into income. Is that so wrong? Patricia spoke before I could. It's wrong when you do it by tearing someone else down. When you build your platform partially on mocking a woman who's never done anything but help you. Vanessa's face crumpled. I know that. Eleanor, She took a shaky breath. I was jealous of you. Is that what you want to hear? I was jealous because you had real wealth, real security, and you didn't need to perform it for anyone. You just existed in your beautiful house with your successful business and your genuine confidence, and it made me feel like a fraud. Because I am a fraud. Everything about my online life is carefully curated bullshit designed to make people think I'm someone I'm not. Then why not just be yourself? I asked. Why not build something real instead of this exhausting performance? Because myself isn't good enough. The words burst out of her, loud and anguished. Myself is the poor girl whose dad failed. Myself is terrified every single day that someone will figure out we're drowning in debt. Myself has panic attacks in the bathroom while Trevor's at work and Benjamin's at school. The Instagram version doesn't have panic attacks. The Instagram version has everything under control. I looked at this young woman, and she was young, only 30 years old, and saw something I recognized from my own past. The desperation to prove yourself, the fear of being seen as less than, the exhausting effort of maintaining an image. Vanessa, I said gently, do you actually want to be married to my son? Or do you want to be married to the image of success he represents? She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Because those are two different things, I continued. And I think you need to figure out which one matters more before you sign any agreements about your future. I love Trevor, she whispered. I do. He understands what it's like to feel like you're not enough. His whole life, he's felt like he didn't measure up to some invisible standard. We bonded over that. You bonded over shared trauma and turned it into a toxic feedback loop, Patricia observed. You reinforce each other's worst impulses instead of helping each other heal. The door opened. Trevor came back in, his eyes red, but his expression more composed. He sat down heavily in his chair and looked at Marcus. What do I need to sign? Marcus pulled out the formal agreement. Before you sign anything, I want to make sure you understand what you're committing to. This isn't a temporary arrangement. This is a legally binding contract that will govern your relationship with your mother and your son's trust fund for the foreseeable future. I understand. The therapy requirement is non-negotiable. Individual therapy for both you and Vanessa, plus couples therapy, plus family therapy that includes your mother. 2 years minimum, possibly longer if the therapist recommends it. Fine. The financial transparency means your mother will receive quarterly reports on all expenses related to Benjamin's care and education. You can't hide purchases or costs from her anymore. I said fine. The repayment schedule is $1,250 per month for 10 years. If you miss more than 2 payments, the full amount becomes due immediately. Trevor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. And most importantly, Marcus continued, your mother gets guaranteed access to Benjamin. 2 weekends per month. Minimum. Holiday arrangements to be determined collaboratively. Any attempt to interfere with this access or to poison Benjamin's relationship with his grandmother results in immediate activation of Option 1. Do you understand what that means? It means you sue us for everything, and I lose any control over my son's trust fund. Correct. Trevor looked at me. Can I ask for one thing? Just one thing that's not in the contract? What? Can I explain this to Benjamin, my way? His voice broke slightly. I need to tell my son that I was wrong, that Grandma was right, that I'm going to do better. Can I do that? I felt something shift in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something softer than the anger I'd been carrying. Yes, I said, but I want to be there when you do it. I want to hear what you say. He nodded. Okay, that's fair. Vanessa spoke up, her voice small. Can I ask something too? Go ahead, I said. The Instagram thing. Do I have to? She swallowed hard. Do I have to make a public statement? Admit what I did? I considered this. Part of me wanted her humiliated the way she'd humiliated me. wanted her followers to know the truth about their perfect influencer and her ugly secret account. But another part of me, the part that had just watched her confession, seen her genuine pain, knew that public destruction wouldn't actually heal anything. Delete the anonymous account, I said. All of it. Every post, every comment. Then step back from Instagram for a while. Not forever, if that's truly your career. But take a break. Focus on real life instead of performing life. See if you can figure out who Vanessa actually is when she's not trying to impress strangers. How long is a while? At least 6 months. Maybe more. Let your therapist help you figure that out. She looked like I'd asked her to cut off a limb. 6 months? Eleanor, my engagement rate will tank. My sponsors will drop me. I'll lose everything I've built. Then you'll rebuild it on something real instead of something fake, Patricia said. Or you'll find a different career. Either way, you'll survive. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Looked at Trevor. He was staring at the agreement, not at her. Trevor, she said, say something. He looked up at her, and I saw something I'd never seen in my son's eyes before. Disappointment. I can't believe you had a whole account dedicated to trashing my mother, he said quietly. I knew you didn't like her. I knew you thought she was, I don't know, not sophisticated enough or whatever. But 47,000 people, Vanessa? You built a following by making my mother a joke? You didn't exactly defend her, Vanessa shot back. You complained about her too. You called her cheap. You said she embarrassed you. Don't act like you're innocent here. You're right, Trevor said. I'm not innocent. I've been a shitty son for years. But at least I had the decency to be a shitty son to her face instead of performing it for an audience. The silence that followed was brutal. Marcus cleared his throat. I need signatures if we're moving forward with option 2. Both of you need to sign, acknowledging that you've read and understand the terms. He slid the document across the table with 2 pens. Trevor signed first. His signature was shaky but decisive. Then he pushed the paper to Vanessa. She stared at it for a long moment. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, the cost-benefit analysis. What she'd lose by signing versus what she'd lose by refusing. Finally, she picked up the pen. I want you to know, she said, looking at me as she signed, that I'm not doing this just to save my career or avoid a lawsuit. I'm doing it because I'm tired. I'm so tired of pretending, of performing, of being afraid every second that someone will see through the facade. Maybe 6 months off Instagram will kill my career, or maybe it'll save my life. She signed her name with a flourish that seemed almost defiant. Marcus collected the documents. I'll have final copies prepared within 48 hours. You'll each receive one for your records. The first therapy session should be scheduled within 2 weeks. I'll send referrals for therapists who specialize in family dynamics and financial trauma. Financial trauma, Trevor repeated with a bitter laugh. Is that what we're calling this? That's exactly what it is, Marcus said. Unprocessed anxiety about money and status that's been poisoning your family relationships for years. Therapy won't fix it overnight, but it's a start. Patricia stood up. I think we're done here. I stood too, gathering my bag. Trevor and Vanessa remained seated, looking shell-shocked. Mom, Trevor said as I reached the door. Wait. I turned. He stood up, took a few steps toward me, then stopped, like he wanted to hug me but wasn't sure if he was allowed. Can I? He gestured awkwardly between us. Can I try to explain? Not excuse, just explain? I waited. When Dad died, he said slowly, I felt like I lost the only parent who understood what I was trying to become. You were always so content with what you had. Your gallery, your investments, your quiet success. Dad had bigger dreams. He wanted to design something that would last, something impressive. I thought he understood my need to be more than just comfortable. Your father was plenty ambitious, I said, but he never measured his worth by other people's standards. That's the difference between you two. I know that now. I'm starting to understand that the whole time I was chasing what I thought Dad wanted, I was actually running from what I was afraid of, which was what? Being you, he said simply. Being someone who built something real but modest, someone who was successful but not spectacular. I was terrified of being ordinary. There's nothing ordinary about dignity, Trevor. There's nothing ordinary about building a life with integrity. Your father understood that. I hope someday you will too. I walked to him then, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I hugged my son. He wrapped his arms around me and I felt him shaking, felt tears soaking into my shoulder. I'm going to fix this, he whispered. I'm going to be better. I promise. Don't promise, I said, pulling back to look at him. Just do it. Show me through actions, not words. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I looked at Vanessa, still sitting at the table looking lost. You too, Vanessa. I'm not your enemy. I never was. But I won't be your scapegoat either. Figure out who you want to be, then be that person. Authentically. She nodded without speaking. Patricia and I left the conference room. As we walked to the elevator, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not happy, exactly. Not relieved. But clear. Like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. In the elevator, Patricia squeezed my hand. You did good, Eleanor. Did I? I just legally obligated my son to pay me back and go to therapy. You gave him boundaries and accountability. That's love too. Maybe the most important kind. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Bright January sunlight streamed through the windows. I had a meeting at the gallery in an hour. I had my life, my work, my independence. And for the first time in a long time, I had hope that maybe, eventually, I might also have my family back. But this time, it would be on terms that honored everyone involved. This time, love would come with respect. 6 months later, I was in my kitchen making chocolate chip cookies with Benjamin when my phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. First payment sent. Thank you for giving me the chance to make this right. I checked my bank account. Sure enough, $250 had been deposited that morning. Payment 1 of $120. Grandma Ellie, you're smiling, Benjamin said, chocolate smeared across his cheek. What's funny? Nothing's funny, sweetheart. I'm just happy. And I was. Not because of the money, though the principle mattered, but because Trevor had kept his word. 6 months of therapy, 6 months of showing up, 6 months of actually trying. It hadn't been easy. Those first few therapy sessions were brutal. Our family therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, didn't pull punches. She made Trevor confront exactly how his obsession with status had damaged our relationship. She made Vanessa face her dependence on external validation. And she made me acknowledge my own role, how my silence and continued financial support had enabled their worst behaviors instead of forcing earlier accountability. You taught your son that love means tolerating disrespect, Dr. Chen had said during our 3rd session. And he learned that lesson very well. That had stung. But it was true. Trevor's individual therapy was revealing things even he hadn't fully understood. The shame he'd carried since childhood about our modest life compared to his prep school friends. The way losing Robert had felt like losing his shot at becoming someone impressive. The deep-seated fear that he'd never be enough. I've been trying to prove something to people who don't even matter, he'd told me after one session. Dad's been gone for 7 years, and I'm still trying to make him proud by becoming some fantasy version of success that he never even wanted for me. Vanessa's transformation was even more dramatic. She'd deleted her anonymous Instagram account the day after signing the agreement. Then, 3 weeks later, she'd deactivated her main account too. Not deleted, just stepped back completely. I couldn't do it halfway, she'd explained when I asked. Every time I started to post something, I'd think about who I was performing for and why. It made me sick, so I just stopped. Without Instagram, Vanessa had to figure out who she actually was. The answer surprised everyone, including her. She started volunteering at a local nonprofit that helped families recovering from bankruptcy, using her own trauma to help others. She got a part-time job at a boutique marketing firm, doing actual work instead of self-promotion. She started therapy twice a week and discovered she had anxiety disorder that had never been properly treated. I've been medicating with likes and comments, she told me during one of our coffee meetings, something we'd started doing monthly as part of the family therapy homework. Every notification was a hit of dopamine that made me feel like I mattered. Without that, I had to face why I felt like I didn't matter in the first place. She was different now, softer, more real. She wore less makeup, bought fewer designer pieces, stopped curating every moment. She was actually pleasant to be around when she wasn't performing. Trevor had made changes too. He'd started being honest with friends about his financial situation, stopped pretending to pay for things I covered, even admitted to a few close colleagues that he was in therapy working through family stuff and money anxiety. It's like a weight lifted, he'd said. Turns out people don't actually care that much. Half of them admitted they were struggling too. We were all just pretending to be more successful than we were. The biggest change was with Benjamin. I had him 2 weekends a month now, plus holidays we carefully negotiated. But even more than the quantity of time, the quality had shifted. Trevor and Vanessa stopped filming everything. They let Benjamin just be a kid. They didn't interrupt our time together with requests for photos or worry about whether activities were on brand. Last weekend, Benjamin had asked me, "Why did Mommy stop putting my pictures on Instagram?" "Because she realized you're a person, not content," I'd said, "and people are more important than pictures." He'd thought about that for a minute, then said, "I like it better this way. I don't have to smile all the time." My heart had broken and healed simultaneously. The repayment plan was working. Trevor and Vanessa had created an actual budget, something they'd never done before. They'd traded the BMW for a Honda. They'd stopped eating out 5 nights a week. They were living within their means for the first time in their marriage. "We have more money now than when we were spending like crazy," Vanessa had marveled during our last coffee meeting. "It makes no sense, but it's true." "It makes perfect sense," I'd replied. "You were hemorrhaging money trying to look wealthy. Now you're actually building wealth instead of performing it." The trust fund for Benjamin remained secure. Trevor had proven himself trustworthy enough that Marcus and I agreed to keep him as co-trustee with oversight rather than removing him entirely. It felt like progress. Patricia had been right that day in the conference room. Boundaries were love. Accountability was love. Sometimes the most loving thing you could do was refuse to enable someone's self-destruction. My phone buzzed again. This time, a photo from Vanessa, Benjamin at the park, genuinely laughing, completely unposed. The message, "Thought you'd want to see this. No filter, no performance, just your grandson being happy." I saved the photo and replied, "He's beautiful. Thank you for sharing." That night, I had dinner with Trevor, Vanessa, and Benjamin at their house in Wellesley. It was the first time I'd been invited over in nearly a year. The house looked different, less like a showroom, more like a home. There were toys on the floor, dishes in the sink, normal mess of normal life. "Sorry about the chaos," Vanessa said, genuinely embarrassed. "Don't be. It's perfect." During dinner, Trevor brought up something that had been on his mind. "Mom, I've been thinking about the money, the $287,000. I know we're paying back $150,000, but what about the rest? Consider it what it was, gifts to my son when he needed help. But I didn't need help. Not really. I needed to learn to live within my means. You needed help because you hadn't learned that yet. There's a difference." He was quiet for a moment. "I want to pay it all back. Not legally, I understand the agreement, but morally. I want Benjamin to grow up seeing that when you make mistakes, you make them right. All the way right." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Then we'll talk to Marcus about amending the agreement, if that's what you truly want." "It is." After dinner, Trevor asked if we could talk privately. We went out to their back deck, watching the sun set over their perfectly landscaped yard, another expense they were reconsidering. "I need to tell you something," Trevor said. "Something I should have said months ago." "Okay." "I'm proud to be your son." His voice cracked. "I spent so many years being ashamed of you, of our life, of everything you built. I wanted you to be someone different, someone flashier, someone impressive to people who don't matter. But Dad knew what I couldn't see. You are impressive. You built a real life with real wealth and real dignity. You survived losing him and came out stronger. You raised me even when I made it as hard as possible. And when I crossed every line, you didn't destroy me. You gave me a chance to become better." I couldn't speak. I just reached for his hand. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure Benjamin knows his grandmother is a hero," Trevor continued. "Not because you're rich or successful, but because you're good. Because when it mattered most, you chose to be kind, even when you had every right to be cruel." "I wasn't kind on Christmas night," I managed to say. "Yes, you were. You walked away instead of making a scene. You gave me consequences instead of cutting me off. You forced me to grow up instead of letting me stay broken. That's the kindest thing you could have done." We sat in comfortable silence, as the sky turned pink and gold. Inside, I could hear Vanessa reading to Benjamin, her voice gentle and unhurried. No camera recording, no performance, just a mother and son and a bedtime story. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had work to do. Years of therapy ahead, complicated conversations, and difficult growth. Trevor and Vanessa would stumble. I would have to resist the urge to fix everything for them. But we were trying, all of us, genuinely trying. And sometimes, trying is enough. Sometimes, consequences lead to growth. Sometimes, love means knowing when to be soft and when to be steel. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw both the boy he'd been and the man he was becoming. Saw Robert's eyes and my determination and something entirely his own. "I'm proud of you too," I said finally. "Not for what you have or what you've accomplished, but for having the courage to change. That's harder than any success." He squeezed my hand. Through the window, Benjamin called out, "Grandma Ellie, come read with us." I stood up, and Trevor walked with me back inside, back to the family that had broken and was slowly, painfully healing. Marcus had been right about one thing. Documents and boundaries had given us structure. But this messy, imperfect, genuine attempt at being a real family, this we had to build ourselves. One honest conversation at a time. One kept promise at a time. One chocolate-smeared weekend at a time. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.